But the comparison is not even close to what the left does.
So let's have some statistics from your own government.
They promote it.
Let's have some statistics from your own government. These are your own government statistics. Now, I know you might not want to listen to the facts, but this is the facts. A study from US government itself says that the majority of political violence in the United States occurs from the right, not the left, from the right.
In the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination, we continue to hear that political violence comes predominantly from the right. At least that's the narrative that the mainstream media is pushing. But once we take a look at the evidence, it's the left that has created an environment where violence isn't just tolerated, it is actively excused, encouraged, and in a disturbing number of cases, it is celebrated. Hey folks, Mad Cat here. Welcome to the channel where we talk about politics, faith, current events, and controversial topics. Debate has erupted over who drives political violence in the country following the death of Charlie Kirk. In truth, the most shocking part wasn't the murder itself. It was the reaction from a seemingly growing number of radicals on the left. Cheers, disgusting memes, excuses, and silence. And no doubt we've heard the manufactured, "we condemn this act," or "the temperature needs to be brought down," or my personal favorite, "now is the time to come to the table and talk." But it's always insincere, and right on cue, the pivot comes. Not mourning the man's life, not condemning the hatred that clearly fueled it, but immediately pushing their favorite platform obsession, gun control and regulation. Because apparently the real tragedy isn't that a man was executed in cold blood. It's that the public still has access to firearms. So who's really more violent, the right or the left? When the right erupts, it's usually tied to one high-profile event, unanimously condemned by those on the right. But when the left erupts, it's city after city, night after night, year after year. Violence has become commonplace on the left. Let's start with 2020. Following George Floyd's death, there were massive violent riots, which we were often told were mostly peaceful protests. Yeah, peaceful protests that caused over $2 billion in damages. Cities burned, businesses gutted, lives destroyed. Many of those businesses were minority owned, by the way. Police officers were assaulted and dozens of people were killed. Tell me, how does burning down a black-owned grocery store, how is that justice? Tell me how killing a retired black police officer like David Dorn in St. Louis is resistance. That's not justice, that's barbarism. And yet the chaos was excused. Politicians literally took to the media and called it necessary resistance. Celebrities donated bail for rioters. Kamala Harris herself promoted a bail fund. Journalists and reporters stood in front of burning cities and told us with straight faces, these protests are mostly peaceful. These were not protests. It was the costliest wave of riots in American history. More expensive than the Watts riots, more expensive than the Rodney King riots, and far more deadly. Then there's Antifa. Antifa isn't an anti-fascist protest movement. It's a paramilitary subculture. They don't even pretend to be peaceful. Their entire brand is one rooted explicitly in violence. They use violence to silence dissenting opinion, which is the greatest irony of all, as that is the hallmark of fascism. Smash windows, torch cars, assault police, chase out speakers on college campuses, and beat journalists nearly to death, all under the banner of anti-fascism. Examples like the Berkeley riots and the Portland riots in 2019, which targeted courthouses and police precincts, are seared into memory. Antifa isn't just a fringe group. Politicians and media figures downplay them as just an idea. Biden said this in 2020 himself.
This is a left-wing white supremacist. Antifa's an idea, not an organization.
Oh, you got it.
Not militia. That's what his FBI.
And dismissing them as just an idea gives them room to operate, which is precisely why it is necessary that they are now designated a domestic terrorist organization. And just recently, it escalated further. We're not just talking about riots or beaten journalists anymore. We're talking about organized armed attacks on federal facilities. On September 24th in Dallas, Texas, a 29-year-old sniper by the name of Joshua Gent opened fire on an ICE transport van, killing a detainee and critically injuring 2 others. Investigators found ammo at the scene with anti-ICE scrawled across it. That's straight up terrorism. Not to mention the alleged targets weren't even those that he hit. He wounded and killed detainees. And back in July, the Alvarado ICE detention center was attacked in a coordinated assault. Fireworks were set off as a diversion, and armed attackers ambushed officers. One officer was shot in the neck and barely survived. These weren't movements or protests that got out of hand. They were coordinated assaults on law enforcement officers. It's no wonder ICE wears masks. I'm sure I'd be doing the same thing if people were doxing me and displaying my home address and pictures of my family on the internet. It also bears mentioning that 64% of ICE agents are minorities. Are we to assume that they are racist? And yet, when the left commits violence, it's spun as righteous anger, necessary collateral, and responses to injustice. When the right does it, it's the death of democracy, the end of the republic, and the beginning of authoritarian rule. If political violence is truly wrong, it's wrong for everyone. But if you only condemn it when it helps your side, you're not actually against violence. The truth is this: violence has become a tool of the left. We see it in riots on the street, in mobs showing up outside officials' homes, in the doxing and stalking of ICE agents, and in fists and bullets flying wherever someone dares to speak an unpopular opinion. That's not debate. That's not democracy. It's terrorism operating under the guise of activism. And it works because ordinary people have spent far too long being silent, letting it slide. So what happens when this is normalized? Property is destroyed, cops are vilified, and civilians are killed. That is not America. That is not what we stand for. And unless we have the courage to call it out, we are headed toward a rapid decline in this country. Mad Cat out.